By the time that drawer slammed behind us, I'd already decided I wasn't going to write any of this down. I'm a security officer. I'm supposed to be the person who makes sense of things at 3 in the morning, not the one junking up the report with odd feelings and impressions. That works in ghost stories, not in incident logs with case numbers. But I keep circling back to one detail. I remember the drawers being closed. I remember seeing them closed twice. And every night since, when I pass that darkened window on the 5th floor and see my own reflection looking back, I'm a little less sure I remember anything the way it actually happened. Our hospital has a historical building. That's what the brochures call it. In the safety training videos, they call it Legacy North, with old footage of nurses in white dresses wheeling shiny gurneys under chandeliers. In the locker room, people still call it by the name the older guards use, the Old Wing. It's the kind of place administrators like to show off at fundraisers. Ornate staircases, stained glass, marble floors that echo your steps. But it's mostly offices now, records, storage, some outpatient stuff during the day. At night, it's just an empty shell, except for the chapel on the 1st floor where I heard the tippy taps, and the 5th floor where room 501 lives. The main elevator in that building has been out of service for 2 years. Parts on back order, they say, like the elevator is a patient waiting on surgery. So for night patrols, we use the side elevator around the back, the one that's half industrial, half afterthought. You need a badge and a stubborn streak even to get it to move. That night, it was just past 2. The cameras showed nothing unusual. The radios were quiet. The air outside was that damp, autumn kind of cold that sticks to your uniform. I was doing my usual perimeter check, walking past the black glass of the historical building's windows when I saw it. Room 501's lights were on. On the outside, Legacy North is dark, mainly at night. Emergency lighting, a few hallway strips, and the glow from vending machines. But 501 sits in a corner with its own bank of tall windows. When its lights are on, it looks like a little stage set floating in the 5th floor darkness. I saw the glow, stopped on the service drive, and felt my stomach do that slow twist it does when you recognize trouble you didn't ask for. "Of course," I muttered. "Of course it's you." I keyed my radio. "Unit 12 to Unit 8, you still at South Lot?" A burst of static, then my partner's voice. "Yeah, copying. What's up?" "Legacy North, 5th floor, 501's lit again." There was a pause. "You sure it's not just the hall?" "I'm looking right at it, Marco." He let out an exaggerated sigh. "You know I hate that floor." "I'll meet you at the back door," I said. "We'll go together." That's the only way I get him to step foot into the Old Wing if something's already wrong. If a door's propped, an alarm's tripped, a light's left on in a place that should be dark. He laughs it off, but he's seen enough little things here that he doesn't joke as hard as he used to. I've had more than a few things. My first experience was on that same floor, just a different night and a different room. I keep telling myself I'll write that one out someday. Maybe this is practice. The back entrance of the historical building is all utility. No grand arches or polished brass. Just a metal door, concrete steps, a camera over the frame, and a badge reader that beeps loudly in the quiet. By the time I got there, Marco was already waiting, hands shoved into his jacket pockets, breath fogging in the cold. "You seriously saw 501? He asked as I walked up. "Unless they've moved it to the 2nd floor and forgot to tell us," I said, holding my badge to the reader. The door clicked and I pushed it open. The air inside hit different. It always does. The new hospital smells like disinfectant and coffee. The Old Wing smells like paper and dust and something faintly metallic under everything, like the ghost of old blood in grout. Tonight, there was a flatness to it, like the building was holding its breath. We signed the log at the security desk. Time, badge numbers, location check. No alarms showing, no maintenance work orders on the printer. Just the little red trouble light blinking for the main elevator, like always. Sidecar it is, Marco said, trying to sound casual. The side elevator is at the end of a service hallway. You have to pass by the chapel corridor to get to it. I tried not to slow down when we neared the chapel. Tried not to listen for the faint, rhythmic tapping I'd heard there once when I knew I was alone. Tonight, it stayed silent. I'm not sure if that made me feel better or worse. The side elevator doors opened with an unenthusiastic wheeze. The interior is cramped. Dull metal walls, old inspection certificates under plastic, a faint smell of machine oil, and old mops. Marco pressed 5, then hit the flashlight button on his belt, as if arming himself. "You remember," he said as we started to rise, "that rumor about the nun." "Which one?" I said, but I knew what he meant. "The one who fell down the stairwell from 5 to 1, broke her neck. They say she still walks the halls if you're up here late enough." "That stairwell's locked on both ends," I said. "Alarms on the doors." He gave me a look. I said rumor, not incident report. The elevator shuddered to a stop, and the doors shuddered open. The 5th floor feels different from the others, even during the day. The ceiling's a little lower, the hallways are narrower. They've tried to dress it up with framed photographs of nurses from the 50s and 60s, all smiles and crisp hats. At night, their faces look grainy and far away, and the glass over them reflects your own face if you stare too long. The hallway lights were on dim cycle, just enough to see the scuffs on the buffed floors, the exit signs glowing red at the stairwells. The air was cooler up here and drier, like too many winters had been trapped under the ceiling tiles. We stepped out. Our radios hissed softly in their holsters, then quieted. No overhead announcements, no elevator chimes, just the low electrical hum of a building pretending to sleep. Room 501 is down a short hall off the main corridor. Frosted glass on the upper half of the door. A little plaque that says Medical Records Archive beside the frame. I've walked this hall so many times, my body knows the distance without thinking. 23 steps from the elevator to the 501 threshold. Tonight, the light under the door was a bright, hard strip on the floor. "Well," Marco said, stopping a few feet back, "she's all yours." I rolled my eyes. Chivalry's not dead, just conveniently absent. He grinned, but he didn't move to take the lead. I knew better than to push. The last time I did, he spent 15 minutes after the shift telling me exactly why the 5th floor creeped him out, in more detail than I wanted. I keyed in the alarm code on the panel next to the door. The little red light blinked green and the system chirped. I felt a familiar looseness in my chest, normal, routine. "We're just turning off a light." I pushed the door open. 501 is bigger than it looks from the hall. It opens into a reception area with an old metal desk and a swivel chair that squeaks if you breathe near it. The walls are lined with tall grey filing cabinets, the heavy, clattering kind you could probably crush a foot with if you shut them wrong. Beyond the main space, the room splits into smaller rooms, 6 of them, offices and sub-offices, glass panels and partial walls. It's like someone took one large room and subdivided it without much of a plan. I hit the light switch just inside the door, out of habit, and realized it was already on. The fluorescence hummed louder overhead. The air smelled like it always does in there, paper and toner and the sweet stale note of old cardboard. All the drawers in the cabinets nearest the door were closed. I registered that without thinking. It's part of the visual pattern. Smooth metal, little label slots, handles all in a row. When drawers are left open, They stick in your peripheral vision like a crooked tooth. Alarm's off, I said, more to myself than to Marco. Let's clear it. We've got a procedure for rooms like this. Even if we think someone just left a light on, we clear them like there could be someone hiding. People have slept in less obvious places than behind a filing cabinet. Marco came in behind me, the door closing with a soft click. He glanced around, hand on his flashlight, even though the lights were bright. You take the left? He said. I'll start in the sub-offices, I answered. I moved deeper into the room, past the first row of cabinets. The floor here is old linoleum, wearing down toward concrete. Every step echoed more than it should have. I looked under desks, behind rolling chairs, behind a stack of boxes labelled with years before I was born. I pushed open a narrow supply closet with a mop and a bucket and shelves of dust. Nothing, no movement, no stray jackets or bags, no coffee cups still steaming. In one of the inner offices, there's a window that looks out over the south parking lot. I glanced out just long enough to spot my own patrol car, a dark shape under a street lamp, and the faint glow of the emergency department's entrance far off. It made me feel smaller than I liked. I did another loop, slower this time to be sure. There are so many little corners in 501 where a person could tuck themselves if they didn't want to be found. I crouched once to check behind an old printer, feeling my knees complain, and track the sound of Marco's boots on the other side of the room. You got anything? I called. Unless we started hiring invisible staff, he replied. No. I came back toward the main area where the door was, where he was standing now, leaning to the side to glance into the last sub-room. His shoulders had loosened a little, mine too. Probably just records running late and forgetting the lights, he said. Again. Or they do it on purpose, I said, stacking my hands on my belt. Bet they swap stories about how many times they get us up here. He snorted. Remind me to be petty about their badge audits next month. We both smiled. That helped break the tension. We've done this 100 times. Lights left on, printers erroring, a door not closed right. 99.9% of the time, it's just human forgetfulness. I let my gaze sweep the room one more time. Cabinets, desks, chairs, drawers all shut. I remember thinking that distinctly. Everything's closed. All right, I said. We're good. I'll note it in the log. We turned back toward the door together. That was the first moment I felt it. The silence. Not just quiet. That building is always calm after hours. But something heavier. A thickness in the air, like the room was listening, waiting to see what we'd do next. Marco slowed. You feel that? Feel what? I tried to sound bored. My heart rate had edged up without my say-so. He frowned, eyes tracking toward the cabinets lining the wall opposite the door. Like when the power goes out and you don't realize it until the fridge kicks off. The lights are still on, I said. Yeah, exactly. We walked the last few steps to the door anyway. I tapped the alarm panel to ready it for rearming once we stepped out. The system beeped obediently. Behind me, the room felt longer than it had a second ago. I don't know what made me turn around. It could be the way the fluorescent buzz momentarily fell out of rhythm. Maybe it was my own nerves, looking for a reason to jump. I turned, just halfway, enough to look over my shoulder, and every single drawer in every single cabinet in that room was open. If you've never seen a full-height filing cabinet with all its drawers open, it looks wrong on a physical level. Top-heavy, off-balance, like it should tip and crush you. But that's not what hit me first. What hit me first was that dull, cold punch of realizing that what you're seeing does not match what you know happened 6 seconds ago. I had not heard anything, no metal clatter, no handles a sliding, We were both facing the room for most of that time, standing just a few yards away. Now the cabinet drawers yawned out into the air like metal tongues. Every one of them, even the ones in the inner sub-offices. I could see their fronts at angles through the glass panels. Papers lay untouched inside some. Others were just dark slots. My body reacted faster than my mind. I took a step backward, hand instinctively going to the radio at my shoulder as if it were a weapon. "Did you?" I started, and my voice came out thin. Marco turned, following my gaze. His brain did the same little stutter step I felt. I watched it happen on his face. "Nope," he said. "Nope. Nope. I didn't hear." He trailed off, eyes wide, pupils blown so wide the brown was almost gone. The room felt smaller now, like the walls had leaned in a few inches. The fluorescent buzzing rose in pitch, or maybe that was just my ears. My first thought was, someone's in here with us. Has to be. Someone quick, someone messing with us. Record staff playing a stupid prank. They could have hidden, timed it, thrown every drawer open at once. Except there was nowhere for someone to stand between those cabinets to do that many at once, and no way to move that fast without catching even a flicker of motion, a scrape, the slide of metal on metal. "We cleared this room," I said. It came out more like a plea than a statement. "We did," Marco said. I heard him swallow. We did. He's not the type to repeat himself like that. His fingers flexed on his flashlight. For the first time since I'd known him, I saw him consider drawing it like a baton, not just a tool. I forced myself to turn my back on the door again. Training says you don't ignore something like this. If there's any chance there's a person involved, you don't just back out and pretend you didn't see it. "Okay," I said, trying to push air back into my lungs. We re-clear. Maybe somebody was in a sub-room and we missed them. We do it again." "Or," Marco said, "we call this one for maintenance and let the file gremlins have it." He meant it as a joke, but his voice cracked on gremlins. I stepped toward the nearest cabinet. The open drawers jutted out at chest height. They were old, but the slides still worked. You had to tug with intention to get them out that far. Each one stopped at the same point. I looked down the narrow canyon between two facing cabinets, an aisle that hadn't been there 5 minutes prior. It was just darkness and paper. A smell reached me then, under the paper and dust. Something faint and sour, like wet cardboard left in a closet too long. The temperature dipped a notch. Goose flesh crawled up my arms under my sleeves. "Hello?" I called, hating myself for how standard it sounded. "This is security. If anyone's in here, you need to come out." The room didn't answer, but the silence felt thicker after my voice died. We moved again, methodical, like we were pretending nothing had changed, like that might coax the room into agreeing with us. Marco took the row of cabinets by the door. I took the back offices. We checked under desks again, behind the equipment again. I peered into a narrow gap between a cabinet and the wall that was barely wide enough for my arm. Nothing. No one. Just open drawers and the soft rustle of old paper when the air shifted. At one point, I found myself standing between two cabinets, drawers on both sides, extended around me like boxy silver arms. For a heartbeat, it felt like the room had pulled me into a ribcage. I backed out fast, chest tight, pulse tapping at my throat. "Clear," Marco said, voice thin. "Clear," I echoed, though I wasn't sure I believed it anymore. I felt watched, but not from anywhere my eyes could land. More like from the unseen spaces inside the walls, the seams between floor and baseboard, the dark mouths of the stairwell we never used. The rumor about the nun drifted back through my mind, uninvited, falling down the center of the stairwell, habits and rosary and bones and all. They say her rosary beads still clacked on the steps some nights. I imagined those beads rolling into file drawers, getting shut in with the charts, left there for 40 years. Stupid, I scolded myself. Don't do that. Please don't give it a narrative. But the building loves a story. Every old place does. Okay, I said slowly. We're still alone. I don't know how these... I gestured at the drawers. I don't know how that happened, but there's no one here and nothing's damaged, and the alarm was intact when we came in. So, Marco said. So we secure the room and we go, I said. We can log that the cabinets were found open. Let records know in the morning. Let them chew on it. He looked at me for a second, as if weighing whether I was really, truly comfortable with that plan. Then he nodded, maybe because the alternative was us standing there until morning, waiting for gravity or reason to reset the room. We turned toward the door again, stepping carefully between the open drawers. I brushed one handle with my hip, and it rattled dully. By the time we reached the threshold, my shoulders were knotted so tight my neck ached. I could feel the open room at my back like a pressure system. Ready? I said. The alarm panel waited beside the door, red light steady. Ready, he said, though his voice sounded a little far away. There's a strange vulnerability in turning your back on something you don't understand. It's different from turning your back on someone. You at least know they're flesh and bone, subject to the same laws. I punched in the code, fingers faster than necessary. The panel chirped, accepting the numbers but waiting for the door to close before it fully armed. Don't run, I told myself under my breath. Don't run like some rookie in a horror movie. You walk out of here. We stepped over the threshold, backs to the cabinets. The hallway outside felt narrower, darker. The exit sign at the end cast a dull red smear over the polished floor. I had just reached for the door handle to pull it shut when it happened. Inside the room, behind us, one of the drawers slammed. Not just shut, slammed hard. The sound exploded in the air, metal on metal, a sharp, angry crash that cracked across the room and into the hall. It was the kind of slam that comes from frustration, from someone shoving something closed the way you'd slam a locker when you didn't find what you were looking for. It shook the door in my hand. I didn't see it. I felt it in my fingers on the metal. I saw Marco's body jerk as if he'd been shoved. For half a heartbeat, I almost turned around. I wanted to. Some stubborn professional part of me wanted to face it, see which drawer had moved, and prove to myself that there had to be a rational explanation with hinges and counterweights. Then something more profound, older than training, older than procedure, rose inside me and yanked the reins. Do not look. Marco moved first. I have never, before or since, seen him move faster than a jog on shift. He's got that slow, solid kind of build that usually favors deliberate motion. But the second that slam echoed, he was halfway down the hall, boots pounding, one hand clamping his radio so it wouldn't bounce. Hey, I called weakly, more out of habit than anything. He didn't stop, didn't even look back. I couldn't blame him. I didn't run. Not exactly. But I closed the door faster than I meant to, hard enough that the handle bit my palm. The alarm panel beeped its approval on the other side, muffled now. The hallway seemed instantly narrower, as if my brain had squeezed the walls inward to keep the rest of the building out. I half walked, half hurried after Marco, trying to keep my steps measured, my breathing under control, my ears strained for any sound from behind the door. Nothing, just the fading echo of that slam, folding itself into memory. We didn't talk in the elevator. Marco stabbed at the G button with more force than necessary, then stared straight ahead at the doors as they slid shut. His reflection in the brushed metal looked pale, eyes bright. I watched the floor numbers tick down, listened to the old machinery groan around us. 4, 3, 2, 1. On the ground floor, the doors opened to the same cool air we'd left minutes before. It felt wrong to step out into a world that was still pretending everything was normal. At the security desk downstairs, the night officer looked up from his monitor, eyebrows lifting. "You two look like you just chased someone across campus," he said. "Light left on in 5:01, I said, picking up the pen to sign the log again. My handwriting looked sharper, more angular. "We cleared it, no one inside, cabinets were open." I hesitated over the last part. Marco shot me a sideways glance. "Cabinets?" the desk officer asked. "The file cabinets," I said. "Somebody must have been pulling charts and left them all open. You might want to flag it for records in the morning, let them know to secure their stuff before they leave." That was the best compromise I could find between what actually happened and what would sound sane in a log. "You want me to write that up as an incident?" he asked. I thought of the slam, the way my hand had felt the shock of it through the door. "No," I said. "Just note the light and the cabinets, routine check." He shrugged. "You got it." The rest of the shift moved on, like shifts do. We dealt with an angry visitor at the ED, a noise complaint from the staff parking garage, and a couple of false door alarms in the new tower. Work pulled us along, but the open drawers sat in the back of my mind like an unfinished sentence. I went back over the data after my shift, because that's what you do when something doesn't fit. You go to the cameras, the logs, the keycard records. You let the systems tell you their version of events. The hallway camera outside 5:01 showed us walking up, clear as day. 2 officers approaching, one of us, me, badge up, punching in a code. The timestamp matched what I remembered. The door opened. We went inside. The door closed. Then nothing. No flicker of movement under the door frame. No shadows slipping by the glass. From the camera's perspective, the room was just a bright rectangle in a quiet hall. 3 minutes later, the door opened again. We stepped out. The angle wasn't perfect, but I swear you can see the way we're both leaning very slightly forward, like people walking away from a fire they're pretending isn't behind them. We never turned back around. The audio feed on that floor, meant to pick up alarms and loud disturbances, didn't register the slam at all. I scrubbed back and forth over time. White noise, a couple of distant elevator chimes, muffled voices from the floor below. No metal crash. No anything. It's possible the slam didn't meet the decibel threshold. It's likely the microphone glitched for those 3 seconds, right when we flinched and the door jumped in my hand. It's also possible it only slammed for us. I checked the alarm logs for 5:01, armed at 1800 by records, disarmed at 2:07 by my code, and armed again at 2:11. Nothing in between. The badge reader showed only our entries. No one had badged into the stairwells on that floor for hours. I printed the log to feel its weight in my hand. Numbers and times and codes. Facts that sat there looking solid while something soft and irrational pushed against them from the edges. On my way out, I walked past the chapel entrance. The door was closed. The little red, occupied light was off. No tippy-taps, no sensation of being watched through opaque glass. I told myself that meant the building was done with me for the night. I told myself a lot of things. I didn't go back up to 5 for a week. I arranged my patrol routes around it in quiet, plausible ways. More frequent checks of the ED. Longer sweeps through the parking ramps, doublebacks through the main building. If anyone noticed, they didn't say anything. When I finally did go back up, it was because I couldn't justify not doing it anymore. The elevator ride felt longer, the numbers ticking up like a slow countdown. The 5th floor hallway looked the same dim lights, same framed photos, same scuffs on the floor. 5:01's window was dark. I stood outside the door for a full 30 seconds, listening. There was nothing to hear but the usual building sounds. I keyed the alarm panel. Armed, normal, no trouble. I opened the door. The room smelled like paper, dust, and stale air. Just like always, the cabinets were all closed. I walked in, forcing my feet not to hesitate. Ran a hand along the nearest drawer handle. It was cold, but no colder than metal usually is. Something in my chest unclenched, just a little. I did a quick sweep, not a full clear, more to reassure myself than anything. The sub-offices yawned away in their usual half-hearted layout. A ghost of shoe prints in the dust near a desk told me records had been in recently. Normal, boring. I turned to leave. On my way out, something tugged at the edge of my vision. A tiny irregularity in the wall of neat metal. I stopped. The second cabinet from the door, third drawer down, was open just a fraction of an inch. Not enough to be obvious unless you knew to look. Unless you'd spent a week seeing that room in your head with every drawer pulled like a scream. I hadn't touched that cabinet. None of the other drawers had shifted. The record staff may have left it like that earlier in the day. The vibration of the door opening had pulled it a hair outward. Maybe my brain was tuned to notice that now, like a person who's learned the shape of a bruise. I stepped closer. The label slot on the drawer was empty. No tape, no typed sticker. Just a faint discoloration where something used to be. My fingers hovered over the handle, then closed. I slid it open. Inside were folders, of course. Old manila with worn edges, tab stickers faded. I let my eyes skim the names without really reading them, until I did. Halfway in, a tab caught my eye, not because of the colour or the shape, but because I recognized the typed label. It was my last name. Just my last name. No first initial. No patient number. No year. I stood there, heartbeat crawling up the back of my throat, and told myself this had to be a coincidence. Our facility is big. My surname isn't unique. It could belong to anyone. I pulled the folder out. It wasn't thick, just a few pages. The first page was a standard header sheet. Name field filled in with my full name this time, date of birth, employee ID. But there was no chart number, no unit, no physician signature. Under reason for admission, someone had typed, night incident, 5th floor. The date field was blank. Not zeros, not a placeholder, just an empty line. I flipped to the next page, same header, same name, same blank date. Handwritten notes in a tight, unfamiliar script fill the lines. Subject reports unexplained auditory event, drawer slam. No corroborating data on audio record. Subject demonstrates appropriate anxiety response. Denies hallucination history. My vision tunneled for a second. I focused on the feel of the paper under my fingers, the texture, slightly rough, edges soft from handling. I turned the page. Subject revisited, room 501, despite reported fear response, evidence of compulsive re-exposure, drawer found ajar, subject locates file under own surname, contents self-referential. The ink trailed off there like someone had been interrupted mid-sentence. When I looked up, every cabinet drawer in the room was closed. I checked, slowly, my feet moving on their own. One by one. Hand on every cold metal handle. Closed, closed, closed. The room felt perfectly ordinary. Fluorescence buzzing, dust motes in the air. No pressure in my ears, no drop in temperature. I looked back down at the file. The page I'd just read was blank. No handwriting, no ink, just the header fields waiting to be filled in. The name line is empty now too, as if it had never been typed. My own breath sounded wrong in my ears. I slid the folder back into the drawer. I had to push a little, The stack resisted briefly, then gave. The label tab with my surname vanished among the others. I closed the drawer fully. When I stepped out into the hall, I made sure my hands were steady on the alarm panel. I armed the system, waited for the chirp, pulled the door shut. The log for that check reads, Routine Patrol, Legacy North, 5th floor, 501 secure, no issues observed. It's not a lie, exactly, not in a way anyone can prove. I still haven't gone back through the chapel when the building is at its quietest. I tell myself I'm pacing my exposure like with a phobia, one floor at a time. The tippy taps can wait. Marco and I don't talk about that night in 501 directly, but now and then, when I mention I'm headed to Legacy North, he'll say, "You want company?" A little too quickly. Sometimes I say yes. Sometimes I don't. I haven't told him about the file. On paper, nothing's changed. The elevator is still down, the nun is still a rumor. Records still forgets lights on up there sometimes, like they're nudging us, daring us, or maybe passing along something they don't want to handle themselves. When I see 501's window glowing from the drive now, I feel the same twist in my gut. I remind myself that the drawers were closed that first time. That's the part I cling to. That's the anchor, because every time I replay that night, the sequence feels a little more uncertain. Did I actually look at the cabinets twice before we turned back? Or did I assume they were closed because they usually are? Did I really hear the slam as loud as I remember? Or have I added force to it, fed it with adrenaline and repetition? Did I really read those words on the page in that folder? Or did I recognize my own fear reflected in blank paper and fill in the rest? The only thing I know for sure is that when we stepped into that room, the drawers were one way, and when we turned around, they were another. And whatever or whoever was disappointed enough to slam one shut as we left wasn't doing it for the cameras or for the audio logs or for anyone who'd read an incident report later. It was doing it for us, maybe for me. So I keep writing the safe version in the official logs and the real version here, where I can admit that I don't know which details are accurate and which ones the building has edited for me. I want to know when I started remembering the drawers being closed, and if that's the moment it decided it could start pulling me open instead.